The young man who took my seat smiled like the whole room belonged to him. He did not know my name. He did not know why I was there. And he did not know one rude order. Caught on camera, was about to expose his father's company and erase a $2.4 billion opportunity before breakfast. My name is Margaret Ellis. I was 68 that night, sitting in a VIP chair at Carrington Biotech's Investor Gala in Manhattan. No spotlight, no entourage, just a black evening jacket, my late husband's silver brooch, and a small white place card that said M. Ellis. To most people, I probably looked like someone's aunt, an older woman they could smile at before turning towards someone younger and richer looking. At my age, you learn that look. People see gray hair and decide you must be harmless. They never imagine the quiet woman at the table might be the person everyone is waiting on. Carrington had spent a fortune making the ballroom look like success, but behind the crystal lights and white flowers, the company had been struggling for nearly 2 years. Tonight was supposed to save it. Ridgeway Capital, my firm, was preparing to anchor the deal $2.3 billion publicly, closer to 2.4 with follow-on obligations. But Ridgeway already had concerns, the kind that live in risk memos and quiet committee notes. Tonight was supposed to reassure us. Near the stage stood William Carrington, shaking hands with practiced warmth. Behind him was Preston, the polished heir he had been grooming. Beside Preston stood Celeste Morgan in a pale gold dress. At first, she barely noticed me. Then she saw my chair. She whispered to Preston. He looked over, his eyes moving from my face to the place card. I knew that look. It was the look people give when they believe the world has made a small mistake. Preston stopped beside me without greeting me. Well, he said, smiling faintly, this is awkward. I turned my head slowly. Is it? Preston picked up my place card between 2 fingers. M. Ellis? He set it down as if the card had made the mistake. This seat, he said, tapping my chair, is for my girlfriend. Celeste smiled at me in a soft, polished way. I'm sure it's confusing, she said. These events can be overwhelming if you're not used to this level of seating. This seat was assigned to me, I said. Preston's smile tightened. You may want to check that. I did. The table went quiet. No one wanted to be involved, but everyone wanted to watch. Preston leaned closer. Listen, I don't want to embarrass you. That was when I knew he had no idea how embarrassed he was about to become. He gestured toward Celeste. She is sitting here. I folded my hands in my lap. No, I said. I am. Celeste gave a small laugh. Preston, she said, pretending kindness. Maybe she's with catering. Or maybe she got turned around. It happens at her age. A few people looked down at their plates. That hurt, not because I believed her, but because I had heard versions of it all my life. A woman alone must be someone's assistant. An older woman must be confused. A quiet woman must be harmless. I could have said my title. I could have told them my signature mattered more than every camera light there. But sometimes, when people show you who they are, it is better to let them finish. Preston looked toward the aisle. Security. 2 guards turned. That was the first real mistake. Not the insult, not the assumption. The mistake was turning arrogance into action. One guard came to my side, already uncomfortable. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me. This is my assigned seat. He hesitated. Then Preston snapped, do your job. A flash went off. A phone rose near the press rope. Then another. Celeste's smile froze. Preston still did not understand. Men like him rarely notice the room changing until it is too late. Years ago, a powerful family could humiliate someone in a corner and deny it later. Not anymore. Now rooms keep receipts. Hello, dear viewers of Her Fear. We received the notice that YouTube had disabled monetization for our channel. Since then, we have no longer had any income from YouTube. While producing each video still requires a great deal of work and expenses, such as script writing, editing, publishing content, and maintaining our team. However, to continue keeping this channel alive, we truly need your support. You can support us through the Ko-fi link placed in the video description, pinned comment, and community tab. Any support, no matter how small, means so much to us. Thank you sincerely to everyone who has continued to stay with and support Her Fear. The guard reached for my arm. His hand closed around my sleeve. He did not hurt me. Not really. But he pulled me up just enough for the chair to scrape and every camera nearby to catch an older woman being removed from her rightful seat. For 1 second, I stood before 200 people, warm with the old sting of public disrespect. At 68, you do not need applause anymore, but you still need people to remember you are human. The worst part was not the guard's hand, it was the silence. All those expensive suits, all those polished smiles, and no one moved. Then I thought of my husband, Robert. He used to say, Margaret, you don't have to raise your voice when the facts are on your side. So I did not raise my voice. I smoothed my sleeve. I looked Preston Carrington directly in the eye. What you just did cost your father $2.4 billion. For half a second, nobody moved. Then Preston laughed. Right, he said. Sure it did. Celeste smirked, waiting for the room to join her. But the room did not laugh. The cameras kept flashing. The phones kept recording. Then a woman's voice cut through the noise. Let go of her. Now. The guard released me. Nora Whitaker, Carrington's deputy general counsel, stepped between us. I had met her during due diligence. She looked professionally horrified. Mrs. Ellis, she said. The way she used my name made the table go cold. Preston frowned. You know her. Nora ignored him. Step back when she told the guard, and then she turned to Preston. Do not say another word. Thomas Reed, head of investor relations, pushed through the crowd. He saw me, the guard, the phones, and the place card. M. Ellis? His face changed. He looked at Preston and said quietly, You need to step away from the table. Preston gave another laugh. Thinner this time. Why does everyone keep acting like I did something serious? Thomas stared at him. Because you did. By then, William Carrington had crossed the ballroom with 3 board members behind him. Conversations parted as he approached, but this was not a problem he could fix with charm. He found his son's girlfriend, a security guard, my empty chair, and me, standing calmly while half the ballroom recorded. William looked at Preston, then Nora, then me. His face changed when he recognized me. It lasted less than a second, but I saw it. Public confidence cracked, and the business reality underneath showed through. Mrs. Ellis, he said carefully, I apologize. There appears to have been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That word told me everything. This was a man using his father's power to remove an older woman because he assumed she did not matter. Still, I kept my voice steady. I was seated where your team placed me. William nodded quickly. Of course. Preston looked from his father to me. Dad, come on. She was sitting in Celeste's seat. William turned to him. For the first time that night, his voice hardened. Preston, stop talking. The room heard it. So did Preston. Celeste shifted beside him, suddenly less certain of her smile. Thomas stepped forward. For clarity, he said, This is Margaret Ellis, Senior Director of Transaction Compliance at Ridgeway Capital. She gives final authorization on Ridgeway's investment. That was when the silence changed. Before, it had been curiosity. Now it was fear. Preston stared at me. You're telling me she signs off on the deal? No one answered. They did not have to. William looked toward the phones, cameras, press rope, and frozen guests. He finally understood what his son still did not. This was no longer a seating problem. It was documented conduct during the closing period of a multi-billion-dollar transaction. He turned back to me, quieter now. Mrs. Ellis, perhaps we should speak privately. I picked up my evening bag. Then I looked at Preston one last time. His easy smile was gone. Good. It was time he felt the weight of a room that no longer belonged to him. The executive lounge was only a short walk from the ballroom. Once the door closed, the evening changed completely. No music, no champagne, no polite laughter. Just a long table and 4 people who knew something expensive had gone wrong. William sat across from me. Beside him were Nora, Thomas, and Martin Hale, the CFO. Martin had the investment agreement open. I recognized it. My team had reviewed it for months, and we had already marked concerns in the margins. William leaned forward. Mrs. Ellis, What happened out there was unacceptable. That was better than misunderstanding. Still not enough. My son acted without understanding who you were, he said. I looked at him. That is exactly the concern. The room went still. Then I asked, was tonight's event live streamed to institutional partners? Nora answered. Portions of it were recorded? Yes. Archived. She hesitated. Yes. I opened my folder to the section Ridgway had flagged before the gala. Leadership conduct and reputation provision. Martin read it and paled. William looked at him. What does it say? Martin cleared his throat. Ridgway may suspend or withdraw funding if leadership or affiliated representatives create material reputational risk during the closing period. William's jaw tightened. Affiliated representatives. Nora answered softly. Family members acting publicly in connection with leadership can fall under that language. No one said Preston's name. They did not need to. William leaned back. You're saying my son triggered a conduct clause because of a seating dispute? No, I said. Your son ordered security to remove your late investor's final compliance officer from her assigned VIP seat. In front of cameras, press, and partners. No one spoke. This was not the first red flag. Missed Carrington. It was simply the first one foolish enough to happen in front of cameras. Nora's pen stopped moving. Thomas closed his eyes. The clause exists for nights exactly like this. William looked older than he had 20 minutes earlier. That often happens when numbers become real. William folded his hands on the table. What happens now? It was the first honest question he had asked. My job is not to punish your son, I said. My job is to decide whether Carrington still meets Ridgway's closing conditions. Martin looked up, and I let the question sit. In a transaction this size, money does not move because people smile at a gala. It moves because every condition is still clean. No one interrupted. Ridgway is the anchor capital. Other investors are waiting for us to move first. If we pause, they pause. If we withdraw, the structure cracks. William's eyes sharpened. And your approval is required before the first tranche is released. Yes. The room understood then. I did not own the stage. But I was the last gate the money had to pass through, William said quietly. The commitment was $2.3 billion. The headline number was 2.3, but I said, the full exposure is closer to 2.4. That number landed harder. William looked toward the closed door, as if he could see Preston through it. We can issue an apology tonight. That may be appropriate. We can remove Preston from public events. That may also be appropriate. Then tell me what Ridgway needs. For 1 second. I almost felt sorry for him. But he was the CEO. Culture always starts somewhere. Still, sympathy does not move money. Documentation does. Ridgway needs to know whether tonight was one arrogant mistake. I said, or proof of a deeper governance problem. Nora looked at William. Martin looked away. Thomas stared at the table. That told me more than any answer could. William's voice dropped. You're going to report this? Yes. And what will you recommend that Ridgway review the footage and suspend authorization until a formal decision is made? Martin exhaled. Thomas whispered, the market opens in less than 12 hours. I know. William looked at me. If this gets out before we control the message, it could destroy us. I held his gaze. Then your son should not have created a message the whole room could record. I left the executive lounge just before midnight. No one tried to stop me. The hallway outside the ballroom was quiet. The music muffled behind heavy doors. Staff looked at me, then away. News travels fast. I walked to a window overlooking Manhattan. For a moment, I let myself breathe. I was not shaken the way Preston probably imagined. I had faced harder rooms than that. But I would be lying if I said it did not hurt. Public humiliation always leaves a mark, even when you win. Because part of you still remembers the moment everyone watched and no one moved. Then my phone buzzed. Daniel Pierce, managing partner at Ridgway Capital. Margaret, he said, Carrington's general counsel just requested an urgent call. What happened? I need to report an incident. His tone changed immediately. Go ahead. So I told him, not emotionally, not dramatically, exactly. The VIP seat, Preston, Celeste, the security order, the guard, the cameras, the live stream, the witnesses. When I finished, Daniel was quiet. Then he asked, "Was it recorded? Yes. By Carrington? Yes. By guests? Almost certainly. Press. At least two cameras were pointed at the table. Another pause. Send everything to legal. I'm calling the committee. Inside the building. The night was just beginning. Nora requested the footage. Thomas called board members. Martin reopened the conduct clause. William tried to reach Preston privately, but Preston was still telling people it had been blown out of proportion. Celeste kept repeating, "It was just a chair." That sentence told me everything. It was never just a chair. It was judgment, culture, entitlement made visible. By 3 in the morning, Ridgway had reviewed the first footage clip. The question was no longer whether the clause applied. The question was whether Ridgway could stay without accepting the exact risk the clause was written to avoid. Daniel called again at 3:15. "Margaret one," he said. "We act at market open." The email went out at 7:12 the next morning. Martin Hale saw it first. He was already in Carrington's conference room, tie loosened, eyes red from a night without sleep. The sender was Ridgway Capital. The subject line was simple, transaction update. He opened it, then read it again. The words did not change. Ridgway Capital hereby suspends final authorization and withdraws its $2.3 billion capital commitment to Carrington Biotech, pursuant to the leadership conduct and reputation provision. For a moment, Martin did not speak. Then his phone began to vibrate. Board members, banks, co-investors, legal counsel, everyone asking the same question. What happened by 7:30? William stood at the head of the conference table with the email in his hand. Nobody spoke. The anchor capital was gone. Without the anchor, the rest of the structure began to crack. Nora looked at her laptop. The footage is circulating. William turned toward her. Where? Investor chats? Analyst groups? At least one reporter has already asked for comment. The room went colder. Somewhere down the hall, Preston was still insisting it had been just a chair. That was the problem. He still did not understand that the chair had never been the issue. The issue was what Carrington had allowed him to represent. Meanwhile, my phone rang. "William Carrington, Mrs. Ellis," he said. "We can fix this." I let him speak. "We can apologize publicly, remove Preston from all company-facing activities. I'll call your committee personally." His voice was controlled, but thinner than the night before. "We can still salvage the deal." I thought about Carrington's scientists, employees, and patients waiting for treatments. That was the part arrogant people never think about. Damage travels outward, and the people who create it rarely stand closest to the blast. "The decision has been made," I said. There was a long silence, and then William said, "Because of my son." "No," I said, "because of what your company allowed your son to become." He did not answer. The footage did not create the problem, Mr. Carrington. It simply made the problem impossible to deny. By noon, the headlines appeared. Financial outlets did not care about the chair. They cared about the number. Ridgway Capital withdraws $2.3 billion commitment from Carrington Biotech. Governance concerns derail funding deal. Carrington shares fall after anchor investor exits. That is how the world usually tells these stories, in numbers, in percentages, in market value. But behind every number was a room full of people who had watched an older woman be pulled from her seat because a CEO's son wanted to impress his girlfriend. Inside Carrington, the consequences moved fast. The board opened an internal investigation. Preston was removed from every company-facing duty before the day ended. His photo disappeared from the leadership events page. His name was taken off the next investor dinner. Celeste's name vanished too. By evening, she had deleted several public photos with Preston. It was amazing how quickly people step away from arrogance once it stops looking powerful. William Carrington had to explain why his son had become a governance risk. 3 days later, he called again. His voice was quieter. "Mrs. Ellis," he said, "I owe you a personal apology. I should have corrected my son long before that night." Then he stopped. When he spoke again, his voice sounded older. "I kept calling it confidence, but I had raised arrogance and dressed it in a good suit." That sentence mattered, not because it repaired the damage, because it was finally honest. "Is there any path back?" he asked. There may be a path later, I said, but not under the same leadership conditions. Trust is not reopened with a press release. That evening, I watched one leaked clip. There I was, smoothing my sleeve. Preston was smiling. Celeste looked pleased. Around us were all those phones and all those silent witnesses. I paused it before I spoke. People later said it sounded like revenge, blah. It was not. Revenge is emotional. What happened next was procedural. That is what powerful people forget. When you insult someone with real authority, they do not always need to fight you. Sometimes they only need to follow the rules you already agreed to. A week later, I was back at my desk. Same office, same chair, same agreements waiting. Outside my door, two analysts were whispering about Carrington. They stopped when they saw me. I smiled. It's all right. One of them, Claire, asked, when did you know the deal was dead? I thought about it. Then I said, the deal died when someone in that room decided respect was optional. Claire nodded slowly. Money can survive hard negotiations. I told her, but money does not trust careless power. Later, I received a note from Nora. Mrs. Ellis, I am sorry for what happened. Thank you for handling yourself with more grace than the room deserved. I placed it beside Robert's old fountain pen. Grace. People use that word often for women my age. Sometimes they mean patience. Sometimes they mean silence. But real grace is not surrender. Real grace can stand up from a chair, smooth its sleeve, and let the truth do its work. A month later, Carrington restructured, William stepped down as CEO, Preston left entirely. The board appointed an interim CEO known for discipline. Eventually, Carrington found new financing, less money, harder terms, more oversight. Trust returned slowly, expensively, and never quite the same. As for me, I kept working. I reviewed agreements and read the clauses other people skipped. And whenever someone assumed I was there to take notes, I let them think that for a little while. People reveal more when they think you do not matter. That night became a warning in investor circles. Some told it as arrogance, some as governance, some as a spoiled son who cost his father billions. But to me, it was simpler. A man saw an older woman in a chair and decided she did not belong there. He was wrong. Not because I was rich, not because I had a title, not because I controlled a signature worth billions. He was wrong because no one should have to prove their importance to receive basic dignity. Respect is not decoration. It is not something you offer after checking someone's net worth. In business, respect is the price of admission. That was how $2.4 billion disappeared. Not because of a chair, not because of a gala, not because one older woman refused silence. It disappeared because an arrogant son showed investors exactly what his father's company tolerated. He thought I was in the wrong chair. In truth, he was in the wrong room. Hello, dear viewers of Her Fear. We received the notice that YouTube had disabled monetization for our channel. Since then, we have no longer had any income from YouTube. While producing each video still requires a great deal of work and expenses, such as script writing, editing, publishing content, and maintaining our team. However, to continue keeping this channel alive, we truly need your support. You can support us through the Ko-fi link placed in the video description, pinned comment, and community tab. Any support, no matter how small, means so much to us. Thank you sincerely to everyone who has continued to stay with and support Her Fear.